The year is officially over, so let's do my favorite books of 2025. So, if you follow me, you know that I like to do my little mood boards at the end of the year, so be prepared. I grew up on Tumblr, I cannot help it. But starting off with a little bit of a curveball, Deep Cuts was my number 10 favorite book of the year. This is by Holly Brickley. Most of these will have gotten their own posts, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. And also, there's 10, so I can't do like a minute on each one. But this is a literary romance about two kids who meet at college, Percy and Joe. This might come as a little bit of a surprise to people because I don't really read romance and I hated the ending of this book, which I will fully admit. But at the end of the day, when I was making this list, I was thinking about books that like really moved me and whose reading experiences I enjoyed. And I loved like every second of this book up until the end. It's a sort of prolonged will they or won't they, but because it's set in like the indie sleaze era, which I grew up in, right? Like going to shows in like the early aughts, just like the experience of being in the city. The main character travels around to a bunch of different like bars and parties, and it's just like so evocative of that time. I downloaded a bunch of songs from this playlist. Like I was just very, very into the vibe and the atmosphere of this book, and I really enjoyed it. Next up is The Wilderness by Angela Flournoy. I posted about this book the day it came out. I read it way back in January and I knew that it was going to be one of my favorites of the year. This is a book about five Black women who are friends and it's told through vignettes. So we get different chapters that are like sliced up and you get different views into each of their lives and like worldviews. Ultimately, it tells a really beautiful story about deciding what's important to you, right? Whether it be family or career or kids and like being in a bad relationship, choosing your friends over and over again, choosing to decide who are the people that are going to be in your life as you move on. This book takes place over 20 years. So we watch them grow and change so much from very young women to adult women. And I just thought it was absolutely beautiful. The way that she writes about community, care, longing, and just like making the act of caring for another person as a spiritual practice, I really loved. Next up is Stag Dance by Tori Peters. This is a novella and two short stories which deal with gender and power and the way that these two things are always in conversation with one another, right? Tori Peters specifically said that she wanted to write a book about the way that we both perform gender and also the way that gender is performed at us. And I just thought that was so brilliant. My favorite story is the one that takes place at a boarding school with a boy who's dealing with his queerness and he's trying to hide it and he's in a relationship with someone else and they just start absolutely terrorizing each other. It is so good and so fucked up. Tori Peters is very good at writing about the ways that people can exhibit these petty cruelties at one another and the way that these cruelties will sort of stay with you and linger within your conscious forever. And I just think she's very powerful for that. Next up is Loca by Alejandro Heredia. I absolutely love this book. This takes place right before Y2K. It's two Dominican friends from DR. So riding, one of them is a young woman trapped in a really shitty relationship. The other one is a queer man who is sort of dealing with his sexuality, trying to come out, trying to like explain himself to people. They're both also dealing with loss and grief. They lost a friend back in DR. It is very sad, but also very beautiful. There's a really moving story here about friendship and also a love story. Next up is Great Black Hope by Rob Franklin. This is a book about identity and privilege and the way that we sort of assume that people who are very wealthy are sort of inoculated from racism or the experiences of classism because of where they are in life. And it's like, no, like at the end of the day, even if you work at this fancy tech company, you're still Black, right? The very opening chapter takes us to the Hamptons where the main character is arrested for having something on him and his Blackness works against him, right? The way that it would in real life. This book takes us behind the scenes of a lot of parties of these like very upper class people, but you see their quirks, you see their messiness, you see their flaws, and you understand the way that people are sort of deeply affected by loss and grief, no matter where they are on the class spectrum. And also, if you're a little bit mean and you like reading about parties, this is the book for you. Next up is The Grand Paloma Resort by Cleves Natera, another Dominican. We're riding. I very much love this book, and I'm going to do a separate video about it because I want to recommend it to White Lotus heads. This takes place at a resort, and there's a hurricane coming in 7 days, so the book is very tightly plotted. It is about two sisters. One of them is evil. One of them has been so corroded by ambition and power that she has just like lost her mind. The other one sort of escapes the resort, and there's a lot of plot machinations that happen, but it is ultimately a very beautiful story about conservation, about place, about understanding where you are in relation to like where you're from and the downsides of ambition and capitalism and the way that like obviously capitalism destroys everything in front of it, including your familial and close personal relationships. If you follow me, you know that I was obsessed with this book. I posted about it. Literally, I was still on vacation and I read the whole thing in like 2 days and posted about it while on vacation. This is The Compound by Ailing Rawl. I absolutely loved it. It is being sold as The Hunger Games meets Love Island. It takes place in a dystopian future where there's just like wasteland outside of the compound, but there is still a reality show going on where people have to pair up, right? You have to be in a couple or you get sent out into the wilderness at the end of the day. This is a book that's very frank about beauty and the way that beauty works for you, right? The main character constantly acknowledges that she has nothing else in her life except being beautiful, and this is the only thing that she cares about. It's also a book about intelligence and understanding your place in this like social pecking order in the way that shows like Love Island very much make you understand who is successful and who will not be successful based on how beautiful they are. Next up is Disappoint Me. This is a book about a trans woman who falls down the stairs at a New Year's party and decides to change her life. She enters into a relationship with this cis guy, and there's so much friction between the two of them. This is a book about deciding who you want to be, what you want your future to look like, right? When you are in your 30s, there's a lot of pressure to like settle down and decide who you want to be. A lot of people obviously choose to just like get married and have kids, but when you're queer, that relationship is a lot more complicated. This is a book about deciding what the rest of your life is going to look like and if you're going to choose what's good for you versus what you think you should do. Cheating Heads, We Rise. Obviously, I loved this book so much. The 10-Year Affair by Erin Summers. This is a book about a woman who's imagining an alternate life for herself after she moves to a town that's sort of like Beacon, sort of like Hudson. She moves there with her 2 kids and her husband is kind of boring and kind of a loser, so she decides to start fantasizing about an affair with this guy that she meets at this baby group. When I made a separate video about this book, I said, would you rather be married to someone kind or someone interesting? And the results were very, very divided. This book is sold as an affair book, but it's actually a book about like deciding who you want to be. Similar to Disappoint Me, when you're in your 30s, the disappointments that come with like realizing that this is all you're ever going to do and that weight. I did not want this video to be so long. My favorite book of the year was Universality. This book is very, very complicated and very tricky. It is very short. It takes us behind an attack at a farmhouse in England, and slowly you start to realize that there's more to the story than being told. There's manipulations, there's machinations. Ultimately, this is a book about a woman who has been curdled by ambition, which is sort of similar to another book on this list, but also just the rot at the heart of the human condition, right? If you want things very, very badly and they do not work out for you, it will make you crazy. I think this book has something very, very interesting to say about gender and power in England specifically. I absolutely love this book and I highly recommend it. And that's it.